the impact.
Living in a memory.
Welcome back. Thank you for coming in. This is another installment of Impact. And remember, in this podcast, what we are trying to do is talk to men who are impacting their world. And today we've got one of those guys, and nobody is going to turn this podcast on, see this guy, and not know who he is, including me, because this is a special treat for me. Because when I was younger, we used to keep up with Dave, and to me, you were like Matarazzo, those guys. Y'all were kind of like the original mass monsters. So, you know, we grew up idolizing these guys. So if I get a little giddy, you'll understand why. So my wife is like, oh, no. I'm like, just relax, just relax. So, but hey, Dave, again, thank you for agreeing to come on. And I know that there's a little bit of something that you really wanted to talk about with the Boston Lloyd interview that just happened with Marie, and then also with the his documentary that's just coming out. And I haven't seen that yet, but I wanted to give you a platform to kind of let's talk about it.
I actually viewed the documentary. It's good. It's potent, you know, it gets the message across. And yeah. I know Marie, I think, came on your show to obviously promote the documentary that she spent a lot of time, you know, doing. Right. And you know, it had to be a pretty emotionally, I know it was an emotionally tough thing for her to do. Obviously, it's about her son, but I think it was healing in a sense too for her, because she got to, you know, relive all the moments, you know, with Boston and go through the whole thing. And sometimes it's cathartic, you know, to do these like type of things. But I have to imagine, you know, you have to imagine as a parent, it's tough. I know you told me before the show that you had lost a daughter, and I, you know, my heart goes out to you for that. And so, I mean, there's nothing you could understand more than that. I mean, as a parent, that's like the worst thing you could possibly go through. And, you know, that's why, you know, I have a lot of sympathy for Marie, and, you know, she really loved her son. But, you know, the thing that the only thing that I wanted to bring up was that, you know, I have a son who's very stubborn, and, you know, you have kids. If you tell your kids to do something, more than likely they're not listening, you know, and matter of fact, they'll probably do the opposite of what you tell them to do.
Yeah. Every time.
You know, Sergio Oliva Sr., you know, two-time Mr. Olympia, didn't want his son Sergio Jr. going into bodybuilding because he felt disrespected. He felt like it, you know, whatever his problem was with bodybuilding, he just didn't want him going in. He didn't want him going into it so much that he actually called the gyms in the local Chicago area and told them, "Do not let my son train here." You know,
no.
Yeah. He tried to like completely block him from entering the world of bodybuilding, and look what happened. He became a professional bodybuilder. So
yeah,
you know, you try as a parent, you know, to do your best, and at the end of the day, that's all you can do. And you know, can you blame certain parents? Yeah, I guess if a parent is a drug addict or an alcoholic or he's abusive to his kid, yeah, I think that would probably have a negative effect. But most parents that are normal try their best and try to create an environment as this. I think Boston, you know, growing up in the bodybuilding environment, it would have been, he just loved bodybuilding. I don't, you know, whether it was because he grew up in that household or he just was attracted to it. If Marie and John, his father, would have said, we don't want you to be a bodybuilder, you know, even though we do this, it's not a good, you know, thing. He probably, knowing Boston, being the, you know, the guy who.
Now you knew him well.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah, you knew him well, so you can really speak to this.
He would have done it 10 times over, you know, if he would have told them. I know Marie caught, you know, drugs in his room, steroids when he was 16, which took him away, and you know, somehow Boston got him back, and you know, so you know, I felt like when you did the interview with her, the interview was good, but I thought before you like did like a little intro to the interview where you kind of like were second guessing her maybe parental decisions. And I thought that might have been like, yeah, you know, you kind of like were mislead. You're kind of giving the audience like a tainted view of her before actually, you know, they even watched the interview. So that was the commentary I made, only because I said, you can't really blame her because of Boston's problems. You know what I mean?
Right.
Just because they grow. So that was my only issue with you. Otherwise, the interview I thought was fun. And
Yeah.
as
Go
a
ahead.
parent, I think it's important to let people out there know who maybe are not parents that you could try your hardest. Your kids are going to do what they want to do. All you can do is try to steer the ship a little bit in the right
Right.
direction.
Yeah. Yeah. So for me, when I was actually talking about that, um, I felt the need to do that only from the standpoint, um, because I said a couple of times in that I don't believe that she's necessarily right or she's necessarily wrong. She is seeing this from the viewpoint of a mother, and that's her son that passed away. But when there is a divorce, things are never just one-sided. There's my side, your side, and usually the truth is somewhere in the middle. And so I was trying to come from the standpoint of we didn't have John on the show, and so there were some things that were said, referring to him that he was not there to speak into. And so that's why I said you may not agree or you may agree.
You know what? You should have said that. I think that would have been perfect. First of all, you should have done it after the interview. Let people watch it, make their own decisions. Then after the interview, you should, we don't have John here, who's Boston's dad, who I happen to be friends with, and who actually had the same exact aorta repair surgery that I had, and he actually walked me through the whole procedure, like before I went in for it, and that was exactly the procedure that Boston would have needed too, which is what caused his death, ironically enough.
Right.
And I would have just said that after the interview, and I think this way, then you could have said, "Look, you guys make your own decision. This is one person's opinion." I was confused by what you said, so
okay,
I don't know, because you try to be too nice.
I must not have been. I wasn't clear then, is what you're saying.
Yeah, because you were trying to be too nice, and I think sometimes if you're too nice, sometimes you get misunderstood. Sometimes too.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that it was difficult for me. I have a background. I got a message that said RX Muscle is calling you ahead. I was like, for what? And
no, you know what? Because once I bring things up on there, then all the hatchet crew goes to work on.
I think it was great.
I didn't even say it. I just was trying to say that I thought it was bad that you did this thing before the interview because it kind of tainted people's opinion of her. Everyone else just jumped on the bandwagon, and
okay,
it's like a gang attack.
Yeah, let me just say, I think that's a fair criticism. Hindsight, looking back, I think you're right. I should have put it at the end. I was actually trying to spare her some criticism that I felt like I saw was coming, and sure enough, it started coming anyway. People,
right. You know what though? I'll tell you what, Jeff. What I found when I interview people is that you do the interview, you put it up, and that's it. You can't
let them draw their own.
You didn't force her to say anything. She said what she wanted, and I know Marie very well. She has no problem. Right. She's not one of these people that regrets anything she says. Matter of fact, Boston's radical honesty approach to life and the way he did it is a complete, absolute clone of his mother in that sense. Okay. They're both very, very transparent, which is why I like her, because she reminds you, of talking to Boston. You're not getting any BS out of her mouth. So that's just who she is. So, I mean, let it fly. Obviously she wants to get out there and get the message out there about her son and what happened, and that it shouldn't happen to, another person's son. And this documentary is important to her to make that happen. So.
Yeah. Well, I think that's like I said, I think that's a fair criticism. Given the fact that, evidently it wasn't clear, if you were not able to, clearly define what I was trying to say, then, and I think you're right. So in this entire thing, with what I said, again, I would still love to hear John's perspective on that. But from what I understand, or on everything, how did he see, all of this? I know he had to be heartbroken as well. And, I was just curious at, you knowing him, how has he handled this?
Look at his Facebook page. I mean, you could see. I mean, he misses his son. I mean, there's look, whenever, like you said, whenever there's a divorce, and obviously he wasn't in Boston's life as much as Marie was, because she had
he lived with
custody of him. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
saying after they separated. I'm saying
Right.
that had to be tougher for him, because he wasn't with Boston as much. Obviously, he was living in California. Marie moved her all the way to Tampa to be with Boston, and obviously the grandson. And so, she had a little more time. So I think John had, and I haven't, discussed this with him, but it's only natural. I mean, me being a father, you being a father, there's probably a little bit of guilt there, I'm sure. And he misses his son. I mean, no one wants, he lost his son at 29 years old. It wasn't like the kid was 60, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it hurts, and it hurts a lot. And then I'm sure as a parent, you probably second guess yourself and say, could I have stopped this? Could I have done something more? But you know what the truth is with Boston, and I've talked to Marie about this. Boston did what he wanted.
Yeah.
You could talk to him till you're blue in the face, and I did, and it really, toward the end, it really cost us kind of our friendship in a sense, because he didn't want to hear the truth anymore. He wanted people to tell him what he wanted to hear, and the truth was that he needed to stop everything he was doing and kind of do a about face, so to speak, and clean up everything, get off all the drugs, address the kidney issue, which in addressing the kidney issue, he would have found out about the aorta, and which I think he did. According to John, that there was a cardiac CT scan that showed an enlarged aorta. I don't know if it was never addressed by the doctor, or if Boston ignored it. No one really knows, for sure what was going on there. But if he had addressed that, gotten that fixed, which obviously I got it fixed at 55 and I'm doing great. At 29, he would have certainly soared through that surgery, and he would have gotten a kidney transplant. He could have lived a very, very long, prosperous, healthy lifestyle, and he could have helped raise his child. But you know what? That wasn't what Boston wanted. Boston wanted to go out guns a-blazing, and that's, for someone like you and me, maybe we can't understand that because that's not in our mentality. My mentality is survival, be around for my kids. I have a lot more to contribute to the world. Doesn't have to be at 300 pounds. It can be at 190 pounds or 200 pounds. It's
right.
Doesn't matter to me. I want to be around. So, and I want to be functionally around. I don't want to be like disabled around. So, but Boston didn't have that mentality, and you can't say he's a bad guy because of that. It's just
I actually
that was his decision.
Yeah. I actually liked him, and I told Marie the first time I met him, we had talked online a few times, and I'd sent him some clothing we had a clothing line, a real big clothing line for a while. And we sent him some stuff. He wanted to send me some stuff. And I was like, Boston, I don't use synthol. I mean, and he just wanted to send me all that stuff. I was like, I don't want the, I appreciate it, but I don't want the synthol. Right. And, but when I saw him, I told her the first thing, I was backstage at think it was the North Americans. And I walked through and I looked up and I saw this guy and I was like, I think that tall guy is Boston. and it was funny because, I was, a little over 300 pounds, and he looked at me and I looked at him and I was like, I had no idea you were this tall. And he was like, he was like, I didn't know you were 300 plus pounds. I was like, well, I told you, so, but I was just struck at how nice the guy was.
No, but he wasn't a bad guy. Some people didn't like him only because he told the truth too much so. So like if he called you out on something, and he was right, no one, the truth hurts, it's our moniker with our muscle, but sometimes people don't like that. So because he was too honest about everything, but he was honest about himself too. So that's why he had a lot of fans, because he didn't like hold himself up as higher or better than anyone else.
Right.
He said, yeah, I have a small penis. Yeah, I have I'm addicted to steroids. Yeah, I know I'm destroyed my kidney. He was so honest about it that you couldn't not like him. The problem is, I think toward the end, people saw, and I saw this too, which was very depressing. People saw that he was not going to last a long time. He was doing some very destructive things at the end, especially while he was in kidney failure. He was using stimulants and he was using opiates, because he was depressed.
Yeah.
And we knew it wasn't. That's why Marie, said to the father, we got to have an intervention here, which for Boston was never going to work. But because she knew that he was going down a very, very dangerous path at that point.
Right. And by the way, I wanted to point out too, that in that 5-minute piece that I did at the beginning, I did point out that, she did try to do interventions with him, and she actually got him insurance to get him help, but Boston was just self-destructive. So
he wouldn't go to the doctor. He wouldn't. The doctor basically told him what I told him,
right,
which was to clean your act up. You're still young. Yeah, all right. You did some damage to your body, but we can reverse it, most likely, or at least get you back to good health again. And he just didn't want to do it. He was like so stubborn that he couldn't, look, I've done this interview, and I don't think it's in the documentary if I remember correctly, but I asked him point blank. This was way back in the beginning when I first started, working with him. Came into my studio when it was in New York, and did the TV show. And I asked him, I said, Boston, what do you love the most in life? And he was sitting right next to Ariella, who was, later becoming his wife. He said steroids. Oh. And it wasn't even like there wasn't a thought there. That was what he loved. So if you love something that much, the most of anything else in your life, and then someone tells you can't take them anymore, it's like it's like you're with the most beautiful woman in the world, and people say, you know what, you can't date her anymore. Sorry, you're gonna be like, screw you. I'm not breaking up with this girl. She's my love of my life. Come on, so when you think of it from that perspective, I know it sounds demented, but that was his mindset. He loved taking steroids. You're going to tell me I can't do the one thing that I love the most? Well, then I don't want to be alive. And I don't care if I die doing it. And that was his tattoo, get big or die trying. I mean, it sounds, ridiculous to the normal person, but that's who he was. And so you had to either accept him or you couldn't be friends with him, that kind of thing.
Right.
I couldn't be friends with him at the end because I couldn't watch him destroy himself.
Yeah.
And he knew that I was telling him the truth, but he couldn't handle it. It was too much.
So you had multiple conversations with him, and then at some point he just kind of cut you off?
Well, what I said was,
as far as talking to him,
what happened was, he was doing this. He would come on my show like once a month or whatever, because people don't realize Boston could have made a fortune on YouTube.
Oh yeah.
He just did not like to be a celebrity. He didn't want to be a celebrity, but what he would do is, if he needed a little extra money because he wanted to buy something or he had to pay for a bill or something like that, he would do it. He would go on the circuit. He would do like my show a couple times, and it would get him more business on his website when he would do that. So he would do it for promotion purposes. So he was doing my show like maybe once every couple of weeks, and then he was doing that. So he did like a couple of versions of that lunatic Leo. Who's no longer with us either. He did his show. Yeah, man. I hate to say I didn't know him. I've just heard that he was not a good influence. Yeah, he was a psychopath, number one, and which doesn't mean he deserved to die. I don't even know. No one really knows how he died. I feel bad that he died because he had a kid too, but he was a certifiable nutcase. This guy. And I don't say that about there's not another person in the whole industry I would say that about, but he was he was a dangerous dude. And Boston liked him because this guy was in love with drugs as much as Boston was. So he was an enabler for Boston. So he would like laugh at when Boston would tell him all the crazy things he would do. And he would encourage him. Oh, you can take this and take that. And don't listen to the doctors. Do this and this and this, and you can fix your kid. So who is Boston going to, want to hang around with more? The guy who's like almost like his brother, me, who's telling him you can't take the one thing that you love the most, or the guy who's saying, we'll figure out, I got drugs ideas that I can tell you to do that'll help heal you. Come on. I mean, it's like telling a heroin addict, you want to go hang out with the heroin dealer, or you want to hang out with me, the sober guy,
Yeah, exactly right.
I said, look, first of all, the guy was trying to bash me to get views. And I said, this guy is a lunatic. I said, I cannot endorse anything he's doing. I said, if you're going to go on his show, I said, which you have the right to do. I said, Boston, I know you very well since you're a young teenager. I know that there's nothing that I'll never try to tell you what to do because you're going to do whatever you want. And I would never put you in that position. But I'm also a man. I have convictions, and you have to respect that about me. If you go on the guy's show, which is endorsing what he's saying about me, essentially, by you going on there, because you're supposed to be my friend, I said, you can't come on my show. I said, I just don't want you on the show. It doesn't mean I'm not your friend, but I don't want you on my show.
Yeah.
I said, it doesn't matter. I don't care about views. It's about moral convictions. And I told the same thing to Lee Priest, who was another guy you can't tell what to do. He's like, Dave, I'm your friend. He goes, I'm there for you. I just did this guy's show because he asked me. And I said the same thing to Greg Valentino. And Greg said, Dave, I'm your friend. My loyalty is to you. would never go on a show that would, for a person who would badmouth you. I said, okay, that's fine. But I'm not, there's no like twisting of arms. It was just Boston chose that guy because this guy was enabling him with and telling him, take this drug, take that drug. And I knew it wasn't going to end well because of that. And so, but you know what the truth is? Even Boston, who loves drugs, said to his wife, I think it was a week before he died, I think there's something wrong with this guy, Leo.
Really?
So even Boston, in his deluded state of wanting to take drugs, knew there was something wrong because the guy would just blow up out of nowhere. And like I said, I don't want to badmouth him because he's not here anymore. But you have to know the context of the story. That's why I have to tell this. And so basically, even Boston was ready to leave this guy, but Boston liked him because he can talk drugs with him. And no one else at that point in Boston's life was suggesting that he take any drugs because everyone knew that he was in kidney failure, and no one even knew about the heart. I don't think he even knew about the heart. No one knew about the aorta problem, but the kidney failure was enough that people knew that, this guy needs a kidney transplant. I'm not going to tell him to go take steroids, at this point until he at least gets a new kidney,
Yeah, right.
He wasn't even doing dialysis at this point because he thought that because this guy Leo said, "Oh, you don't need dialysis. We'll give you this and that and detox you this and that." So Boston was.
Did he ever do dialysis?
He didn't know. Boston was walking around. I don't know how he was doing it because he was in stage 5 kidney failure. He had to be toxic. His creatinine had to be through the roof. I think he told me at one point it was like 13 or something like that, or something crazy number. And so, he wasn't walking around very healthy. So I don't know if anything would have happened to him, even if the aorta hadn't have ruptured, but he wasn't heading down a good pathway, And so it hurt me. It was like, I felt like a parent who had I have a friend who overdosed, and his wife and I'm very good friends with the wife. And she used to tell me, Dave, I'm a drug counselor. My son is a drug addict. I have to just accept the fact that one day I'm going to get a phone call and it's going to say he OD'd and he's dead.
Yeah.
And I know this, and we both love this kid, my friend Cole. And she's like, it's as a parent, it's the hardest thing to accept, but I've accepted it. So I just love my son. I give him as much as I can. If he has good days, great. If he's off on a binge someplace, I don't worry about it anymore because I can't control him, and I know what's going to happen. We've tried everything, and he just keeps me. And one day, she got the call, and I had to get the call from her, and it happened.
So he did OD.
He did.
Wow.
Because I was very, very good friends with his dad. He was a powerlifter. Yeah. And he died at 33 years old. He had a viral infection of his heart, and he died in bed. And the youngest son, Cole, found him. He was sleeping next to him, 2 years old. Traumatized this kid for life. Used it as an excuse. Some people would have used it as an excuse never to use, to be healthy. He used it as an excuse, why he had to do drugs and all this. And it was unfortunate because he was a very talented young man and good bodybuilder too, good power lifter too. And I try to be a positive influence on him. But at the end of the day, he loved to do recreational drugs. And I don't know if he OD'd on purpose or if he OD'd by accident, probably by accident. But when you start doing heroin, on a regular basis, that's not a safe behavior, to have. It's a possibility that you could OD, So at the end of the day, you have to people are going to be their own people, and you have to just release. You can't control everything, and that was Boston. It was a very sad situation because it was unnecessary, but that was Boston. He lived life on his own terms, so I had to respect him for that.
Yeah. So hey, let me ask, because I have a lot of kids that are coming in, and I want to clear up something that might be either a common misconception or at least a misconception in my own mind. Because talking to you, you are not the guy that I perceived you to be. And when I say that because one of the things people go, Jeff, why are you at war with bodybuilding? I'm like, I'm not at war with bodybuilding. I love bodybuilding. I have done it my entire life, except for the 20 years I was a pastor. And, I've done it my entire life pretty much. But I'm kind of at war, at least in my own head, with the modern iteration of the amount of drugs. And I'm not even sure that it's with bodybuilding as much as it is with the fitness industry in and of itself, right? Because of the way, social media is out there. I mean, and you look on YouTube and you've got just channel after channel teaching people how to take your first steroid cycle and this and that. And I did a number of interviews with young people at a gym. I have not posted that yet because I still have a few more to go, parental signatures to get, that type of thing. And these kids are anywhere from 12 to 17 years old. And I had a 12-year-old that's already was experimenting with Trent. And all of these other kids. And of course, they all idolize, the Trend twins. And I asked them, where did you get the knowledge from to do this? Back in my day, and every one of them to a person said YouTube. And so one of the things that, and just being really honest with you, one of the things that I always perceived that bothered me was that you were putting out on YouTube how to use the drugs. And so in the way I see things, and I know you're big on education, and I'm okay with education. My problem, or what I worry about, is that 12-year-old that's getting educated also. What do we do here? There's got to be some sort of balance, because, we got Gen Z all on this 30-day, tons of these kids out here. Oh, I'm doing the 30-day trend challenge. Are you kidding me? What do we do?
Yeah. The problem is you have to have education, because otherwise people are doing things irresponsibly. The problem is that most kids and most people are not looking in the right places. That's why I said it from day one. The internet is a wonderful thing. It's a terrible thing. Wonderful thing because you could find a lot of information. It's a terrible thing because you don't know what to believe and what not to believe, because no one edits this stuff. There's no one saying, oh, this is right and this is not, except when it comes to talking about the, that thing that they try to give you to prevent you from getting that virus. You can't talk about. So they'll censor you on that, and they'll censor you in the wrong direction. But aside from that, my message has always been, number one, anabolic steroids are not for kids. Okay. Right. There's no reason for it. You have great hormonal production when you're in your teens. Okay. Does that mean teens are not going to use them? Of course, that's naive of me to think that they're not. But I try to tell people, look, you shouldn't even think about using an anabolic until you're over 18, because you're not going to get the best benefits out of it, because steroids work best on well-trained muscle. So you want to have a few years under your belt. You want to train for 3, 4, 5 years before you ever take anything. And then you're going to get much better results. And so there has to be an education curve. Now, look, everything is dangerous out there. I mean, rock climbing is dangerous. Okay. You ever see the X Games? They're doing flips on snowmobiles. It's like unbelievable. I mean, it's the most dangerous thing you could possibly look at. And I'm thinking, look at all the sponsors they got for this. Red Bull will sponsor this with this kid is flipping upside down on a 600-pound jet ski, but they think bodybuilding is too dangerous to sponsor.
Right.
I don't buy into the whole how dangerous it is thing. I think that anything is dangerous if you're not responsible. If you don't know what the hell you're doing, you're flipping that jet ski around, you're going to kill yourself, right? You're going to break your neck. And so you try to learn the right way to do things, at least the people that are the elite in any sport, whether it be bodybuilding, snowmobiling, X Games, what's his name? What's the guy with the long red hair?
Oh, yeah, I know.
I mean, there's some
Shaun White.
Shaun White, yeah. So, I mean, anyone is, those are the guys you want to listen to. You don't listen to the guy who's selling steroids from his basement, on TikTok, who's doing videos about, how to use Tren.
Right.
Because this guy just wants to sell you drugs. He's not trying to educate you. He doesn't even know anything. He has no educational background whatsoever. And that, I was complaining and bitching about how there's such terrible information out there. I said, you know what? I'm not even doing anything about it. So that's when I started holding my Secrets to Becoming a Diet Guru course, where I actually educate people on the science of diet, nutrition, supplementation, performance-enhancing drugs, what they are, how the body responds, and how you take them responsibly. Because look, let's face it, there is a responsible way to do it. It doesn't mean that the responsible way doesn't have any risks associated with it, because anytime you put exogenous hormones at a pharmacological dose into your body, there's side effects, right? You can high blood pressure, high blood sugars if you're taking too much GH. There's obviously people who have predisposed heart conditions that could be exacerbated by this. There are side effects to any drug you take. And so you have to know, number one, how to monitor the stuff via blood work and echocardiograms and stuff like that. And then you need to know, you need to be with a coach who has an understanding of the science of what's going on, so that they can help you avoid the pitfalls or the dangers, of what you're doing.
Yeah. Because
there is danger involved in it. It's a dangerous sport at the elite level, where you're using anabolic steroids, and you have to accept that risk when you get into it. Now, I know, and that's why I think it's not for children, because I don't think the children can make an informed consent in their head. They don't really know what they're agreeing to. That's why I don't think that kids should be gender reassigned at a young age either, because I don't even think they know what they're deciding at that point.
Thank you. Somebody says it. Thank you.
Yeah. Yes.
I fight this battle all the time. I'm pretty sure that I have several videos that will be taken down here soon. Maybe I might get, I've already got one strike against me for those things. This thing and quite a few other things.
Yeah. We couldn't post videos for a week on RX Muscle because I mentioned something about that. So and so that is more people than anything. So we'll leave it at that. But so what do we say? What do we say? See, what my issue is education is great, but education is also indiscriminate. And, whether I like it or not, because I refuse to talk about dosing, things like that. Is that, in your opinion, just keeping my head in the sand? You don't talk
because
about
people are going to do it anyway, or what do you believe that is in your opinion?
If you don't talk about dosing, then people are going to go and follow the most extreme doses possible.
Yeah,
I'm hardly conservative with the elite level guys, but I think a lot of people would think that I am conservative, because how could only 1,000 milligrams of testosterone build muscle a week? Meanwhile, back in the 90s, if you told someone you were taking 1,000 milligrams, they thought you were nuts.
Yeah.
I thought it was crazy when I first heard it, and I got a lot of my information from Bob Gruskin, who was another scholarly guy who had a lot of experience with athletes. And, that's where a lot of my knowledge came from. I also had a very good friend who was a dermatologist, but he was like a complete savant. I mean, he was super, and he was a bodybuilder, and he was my guy to bounce ideas off of constantly. So a lot of the stuff that people do today that's acceptable dogma, aromatase inhibitors and stuff like that all came from this doctor, and I put a lot of that stuff out there. Even the insulin protocols, the initial ones that was me kind of experimenting back in the 90s, realizing that I was insulin resistant, or that I wasn't producing enough insulin because GH was making my blood sugars high, and how to combat that. And so a lot of that is experientially derived, and then I have a lot of science knowledge on top of that. So I think it's important to understand. Like I was just explaining the other day. I'll just give you for instance, and we don't have to go into that in depth, but
yeah.
We hear this term insulin resistance all the time, right?
Right.
He's insulin resistant. No one even knows what the word means. All right.
Yeah.
It can mean one of two things. You can mean you don't have enough insulin receptors to recognize the insulin your body's producing, or you don't produce enough insulin, right?
Right.
But insulin resistance usually implies that you don't have the receptors. So people take all these insulin sensitizers, berberine and chromium and cinnamon, and people even sell supplements now that make you supposedly more sensitive to your own insulin.
Oh yeah, I've seen it. Yeah.
But that's not the problem with bodybuilders, because bodybuilders have tremendously good insulin sensitivity. Why? Because we eat well, we eat fish, we take fish oil supplements, we exercise, we're not overweight in terms of body fat. So there's no conditions in a lean bodybuilder that would implicate insulin, sensitivity issues.
Yeah.
The problem is we don't produce enough insulin. And the reason we don't produce enough insulin is because the body is not meant to eat 8 times a day.
Exactly.
And the body is not meant to eat 8 times a day while taking, 5 or 6 IUs of GH every day, which is antagonistic to insulin.
Exactly. Yeah.
So the problem is it's not an insulin sensitivity issue. So people could take all the metformin they want. They could take all the sensitizers they want. Bodybuilders who eat a lot of food and who are running high fasting blood sugars need to take insulin, a long-acting insulin, to help subsidize the body's. Or if you don't do that, you're going to long-term have blood sugar issue problems and all the side effects that go along with that. Eye problems, kidney problems, extremity circulation.
Yeah.
All the side effects. And you're going to say, how does this guy who's so healthy have all these side effects? How did he get type 2 diabetes? And why is he getting all these? Because they didn't address the elephant in the room. Yeah. They went by this bro science crap that's online, and all these people selling their insulin cocktail formulations that are going to help you sensitize. Now, there's nothing wrong with resensitizing your body and making it as sensitive as possible. But at the end of the day, for most,
and you can do that through fasting as well.
They just don't produce enough insulin, and it makes sense. And as we get older, and I've noticed this, because my blood sugars were fine, and then all of a sudden I hit 50, and I'm waking up with fasting blood sugars that are 95 rather than 85. Yeah. And I said, well, I wonder why I'm higher. And it's because I'm older. Who knows? Maybe I did damage some of my beta cell, production from being on GH as a 320-pound bodybuilder back in the day. Yeah. But so I started taking a long-acting insulin as just to see, and it solved my problem. I take, take a little Tresiba at night. You don't have the good thing about long-acting insulin is you don't have to worry about, testing, blood sugars. Oh, I'm going to go hypo. It doesn't happen. It kind of works. It's kind of like taking testosterone replacement for a 50-year-old man, because if you don't produce enough testosterone as you get older and you start producing, you're going to feel crappy, right? You might be more prone to health problems. But if you supplement with a little bit of testosterone and bring it up to the natural, normal physiological levels, you feel great. And so that's kind of like anti-aging medicine 101. Replace what you're missing, but don't go to the point of pharmacological effects where you're trying to like induce, muscle building effects with it, because then you're opening yourself to more side effects. You don't want to just bang insulin all day long, that you don't need. And then you have to actually try to feed the insulin because you're taking in too much insulin, which is what a lot of people do. So as you can see, it's a slippery slope of going from health and trying to get a little bit of an advantage in the gym to help maximize the food you're eating versus now I want to go crazy. And because look at how good the results this guy is getting, taking some long-acting insulin at night. He's utilizing his food better. He's growing better. He's staying leaner. I'll just double the dose of that, or I'll triple the dose because I'm going to grow better. That's the Boston Lloyd mentality. Right. And that's when people get into trouble. Oh, he died. He had a blood sugar of 0, took too much insulin. Or he thought he was taking a long-acting insulin. He was taking a fast-acting insulin. He took too much. Yeah. Or, he he died of diuretics. Well, how come there's thousands and thousands of people taking diuretics every day for bodybuilding show? But how did he die? Well, he took 10 times the amount that his coach told him to do because he thought it would dry him out more and he would look better on stage. You hear these stories all the time, and it hurts my heart because I say, you know what? It's just a lack of education, or at least a lack of the person who's doing it actually asking someone who knows what they're doing instead of asking someone who learned from TikTok how to do it.
Yeah, the problem is there are not a lot of there are not a lot of Dave Palumbos and different guys like that out there that people have access to. And so I think a lot of times they're relying on these websites, they're relying on these forums, they're relying on these YouTube things. And at least from what I have learned with interviewing these, dozen kids so far, that, these kids this is where they're getting their education from.
Right. But Jeff, it's the trend challenge is way more sexy and appealing and fun than me telling you don't take any steroids till you hit 18. They don't want to hear that. They want instantaneous. We are living in an instantaneous gratification society.
Right.
These guys don't want to wait 2 weeks to put the muscle on. They want it right now. And you know what? I started bodybuilding last week. This week, I'm ready to start my first cycle. Next week, I'm starting GH. The week after that, insulin. And I'm ready to compete in another 12 weeks. And I haven't even squatted 135 yet on the bar. So that's our society. And you know what? When the results stop coming, they quit. They quit. 90% of the people who start quit because I got in shape for my trip to the Bahamas. And I'm kind of like, well, that's a lot. This is a lot of hard work. I don't want to have to do this all the time. When I'm going to go away, I'll do a trend cycle and some clenbuterol and some T3 and get myself shredded, do 2 hours of cardio a day. And then I'll just go back to being fat the rest of the year, or out of shape.
Yeah.
That's our society. I mean, it's the bodybuilding is a very hard sport and people learn that very quickly. So they try to take shortcuts. They think the steroids are going to burn fat and build muscle. And they don't realize if you don't eat the food, you don't train properly. I don't have to tell you, you don't get anything from it. Half the people in the gym are on steroids and you wouldn't even know it because they don't look any different on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah. And those are the ones that that I worry about. And so, like I've had so many people contact me and, and I probably go the other way, but I do it on purpose because there are those that can be reached by saying, hey man, this is not for you. If you do this, this is going to lead you down a bad path, that type of thing. One of my concerns is with bodybuilding in and of itself. And it's because of the way the sport is and the amount of drugs that you end up taking and all of that stuff. I know my wife and I, and a lot of this was personal choices, but it's pretty common in the bodybuilding industry, and we see it all the time. We were invited to wife swapping parties and all kinds of different things like this, and I was like, nah,
that goes on in every part of society. Not just
I get it. But it was like I wasn't running in those parts of society. I was only running in bodybuilding. And I was like, no, you keep your wife, I'll keep mine. I'm good with that.
Right. Go to a couple of celebrity Hollywood parties. It's a lot worse than that.
We used to spend 3 weeks out of the month out in California training what we call private clients.
Right.
And I was telling people, I was like, you have no idea the difference with those people as with what I call regular people.
Right.
I mean, one of these gentlemen lives in an airplane hangar, and he's got another airplane hangar with his airplanes. He's got this one with his supercars, and he's got this one with helicopters and another one with boats. And he's single, and dropping 14 to 20 grand a week, and I'm sitting out there. You only train 3 times. Don't worry about it. I'm like
having the trainer. I'll tell you the one good thing, getting back to the steroid question again. One of the good things is that most people can't do too much damage to themselves in, even in a year of using steroids. So
Yeah.
90% of the people who do these cycles and experiment with the stuff, they don't really stick with it. They stop taking it. They go to the doctor, they get one bad blood work, they get scared, they think they're going to die tomorrow, and they stop it, and they never use it again. So it's not the weekend warrior guys that are doing the trend challenges that are dying or jeopardizing their health. It's and the Boston Lloyds are very rare too. The problem is that those guys bring light to how dangerous what's out there is going on. But I mean, you only have one or two of those people popping up here and there. It's the chronic users of it on a regular basis, that do extreme things that I worry about. But because most bodybuilders, they kind of know what they're doing. They go for their blood work, they get checked. The problem is that every once in a while, someone drops dead, and it has nothing. A lot of times, people get on me and say, "Oh, Dave's just making excuses." Look, Dallas McCarver, at whatever he was, 24 years old, he dies of a heart attack. Okay. Mm-hmm. For anyone to believe that the steroids he took caused his 95% blockage in his coronary artery at 24 years old, it has to be a fucking imbecile. Okay. Even my cardiologist, I asked, I said, let me ask you. He said, there's no way. That's a genetic predisposition. Does it mean that the steroids may have, and all the food he was eating might have made it worse? Yeah, of course, and maybe, he died of a heart attack because of how big he was and he had the blockage. But the blockage was a genetic weakness he had. So no one can know they have these genetic weaknesses. I think now in the future with DNA testing and more diagnostic testing, we will be able to avoid a lot of these pitfalls. And I try to tell people, even now, some people listen, some people don't, with the advent of cardiac CT scans to check the coronary artery, to check your coronary arteries to see if they're open, echocardiograms to see what the functioning of your heart is. You could find out a lot more about what's going on. Am I going to drop dead? Like when I did a cardiac CT scan with contrast just for health purposes when I was 50. They had just really come out and started really being popular. They had one in the hospital. So I had my cardiologist friend send me for one. And because I wanted to check out my coronary arteries. I know I have very low cholesterol. I figured I didn't have any blockages, and I didn't. And they said you had no blockages, but they found the fact that I had the enlarged aorta, which I had no symptoms of whatsoever.
Right.
And I had an MRI of my heart like 10 years earlier, which I didn't have. I knew I didn't have the aorta issue at all. So that was something new that they caught. Now, had I not caught that, and I continued to train, and as I found out over the course of 3 years, it got bigger. I could have died like Boston did in the gym of an aortic dissection, but I discovered it. And I've helped a lot of people through just that test, the cardiac CT angiogram, find blockages in their arteries. Rich Gaspari had 100% blockage in one artery that developed collateral circulation on its own. They said probably 20 years earlier. And he had another one that was 90% blocked that they had a stent. He didn't know this. He didn't even have any symptoms.
Right.
He would have just died one day, and everyone would have said it's steroids. Well, you know what? He has heart disease in his family. He should have been getting tested. He just didn't. People get scared a lot of times. They don't want to know.
So let me ask you this: Is it fair to say? And I'm asking an honest opinion. Okay, is it fair to say then that probably all of us have some sort of genetic predisposition to something? I mean, and we all do typically. Is it fair to say that steroids can speed up or they will exacerbate the longer that you're on them? Would you say that that's fair?
Let me ask you this question first.
Yeah, go ahead.
Because you're right, but I want to qualify. If some fat guy drops dead of a heart attack,
right,
everyone cries. Oh, terrible! They took him from us. He was such a good boy and such a great soul. If a bodybuilder dies, same age, oh, he used steroids. He got what he deserved. Look at this.
Right.
Why is being fat and out of shape, which leads to heart disease, why is that acceptable?
I agree.
How about if you're not even fat and out of shape, and the guy just drops dead at 35 because he runs in his family and he has a heart attack and dies because he doesn't know he has a blockage?
Right.
He's fine. No one says anything about him. No one blames anything. They say it's a terrible sin, that we lost this wonderful human being. Bodybuilders get vilified because of what we do, which doesn't necessarily mean that the stuff that we do is not making the situation worse. Just like the person who smokes cigarettes, if they get lung cancer, they might have caused it, or maybe they had a predisposition and the smoking just made it worse. But we know there is a cause and effect to smoking, right? And lung cancer. So, but no one says to the person, he got what he deserved. He smoked cigarettes his whole life. No one says that. It's only bodybuilding that we get, like, if someone chooses to use anabolic steroids, that's their own personal decision.
Right.
And it doesn't mean that, and first of all, if steroids were a cause and effect, you take steroids, you get a heart attack, you die. We would have a lot more deaths on our hand than we have now. Okay.
Yeah, that's fair.
Also, I mean, with what's going on with that virus thing, there have been a lot more. We did have a lot more deaths over the last couple of years, and I'm not even going to blame this. I'm just blaming the virus itself. I think the virus happened to increase clotting times and create, the ability for the body to throw clots indiscriminately. And I think that led to a lot of people dying. I said, prematurely. And I don't think it, no one's fault. It just happened. And I think that that's why we saw an uptick the last 2 years, because now you don't hear about it. It seems like things have calmed down again, and we're not hearing about as many, just people dropping like suddenly.
Well,
so
they're going to try, because they're trying to push the whole narrative again.
I know they are. I know them. But my point is that people will die, and it's unfortunate that people like to blame steroids. Now, if someone dies of a diuretic overdose and throws an arrhythmia backstage at a show, yes, that's a cause and effect. Look, the idiot took too many diuretics, or listened to a coach who told him to take too many diuretics. That to me irks me, because those are unnecessary deaths. Yeah. That's just bad information. And people doing stupid, risk-taking things that are not necessary. There's no reason why anyone cannot dehydrate their body enough to look good on stage in 12 hours prior to the show using minimal diuretics. If you can't do that with a competitor, and you have to slam them with 2 weeks of diuretics and not let them drink for 3 days, then you're a terrible coach, as far as I'm concerned.
I agree. Yeah. So we quit coaching. Bo Weiss was Dallas McCarver's friend growing up, and I coached him to a couple of Tennessee titles. And I agree. We didn't cut water till that night, and so you just don't have to. And all of this craziness that you see out there, I just like, because I know him and somebody else. They were like, well, this person said we should cut the water early today. And I'm like, no, we're not cutting it till later tonight. We don't have to. And it's just, it's insanity.
People do risky shit. You know what? There's coaches out there, and this is the people these are the people you're mad at. You're not mad at the Dave Palumbo. You're mad at the people who spread this crazy information. And what they do is they create these protocols that are insane almost. If you look at them, you're like, nothing can be this complicated. But they do that because they want the competitors to think they, number one, can't do it themselves. Number two, it's so complicated that they have to hire this person. And number three, that they're going to tell everyone else how brilliant this person is to come up with this crazy protocol.
Yeah.
And that's called marketing 101 at the expense and health of the competitors that you're working with. Yeah. Why you would start taking diuretics at 2 weeks out from a show and start creating the body, getting the body to start fighting, this diuretic effect. Yeah. And make the person body wanting to try to hold water at that point. And now you're fighting this. You have to keep throwing more diuretics at it. It's the stupidest strategy of all time. And it's dangerous and dumb. And so, there's a lot of dumb people out there. And the problem is, and you can't blame the competitors a lot of times because they just don't know. But I do sometimes, because these guys get bamboozled, and women, by people who try to sound smart. If someone's trying to sound too smart, I tell people run for the hills, because those people don't know what they're doing, or they're making shit up because they want to sound smarter than they really are. You know, I try to speak on the most simplistic terms to people so they understand basic concepts, you know, of what's going on. And here, this is how testosterone works. This is how why your body needs fat. I don't try to make it complicated where I'm talking over people's heads. I want them to understand the process that they're going through. So when I tell them we're going to reduce carbs down to this much, they know why we're doing it. Or if I tell them I want them to go eat a cheeseburger and fries today, they understand why I'm having them. I don't just tell people to do things indiscriminately. I explain to them why, so that they understand that there is a scientific basis for what I'm doing, you know?
Right.
And most coaches won't do that because they want you to think that it's a very complicated, you know, mystical.
It's really not that hard
type of thing. No, it's not that hard.
I mean, now we don't coach anymore. We don't train anymore. None of that stuff. But, you know, so we've been out of the bodybuilding industry since 2019. And, you know, again, the only reason we started this channel, and to be quite honest, in 2018, 19, I would have started and been preaching, you know, moderation, you know, hey, you need to wait till you're older, all that type of stuff. But with the way things have gone, man, and I see these kids, and we had a guy that called us one time. He was 20 years old, weighed 160 pounds. He was with a popular internet coach. Yeah. And the dude he texted me through Facebook, asked if he could speak to me. Normally I wouldn't do that, but he was like, I'm really not feeling well. And so I let him. He calls me up and he's like, dude, I feel like something's really wrong. And I was like, what are you taking? He lists this. Dave, he was taking more than I was taking. And I was, you know, and at that time I was getting ready for, you know, a national show, trying to get a pro card. And I was like, where did you get this? And he tells me, and I said, you know, and he's like, I feel like the back of my head's going to pop off and my heart is racing really, really bad. I said, you need to stop, go to the emergency room right now. You could have a stroke. Because he's like, it was affecting his vision, the whole 9 yards. He goes there. We don't hear from him for a week. A week later, he calls me back and he's like, yeah, I'm pretty much done. Come to find out, he had a genetic predisposition as well with his heart. His dad had it. This kid now at 24 or 5, he's got a pacemaker, and he's going to have they told him he'll have to have a heart before he's 40. And, you know, and so I get the steroids didn't kill him, but it definitely exposed it, because he was listening to an idiot that was telling him to take more than guys. I was 300 pounds. You're taking more than me. And at 160 pounds. You
know what? A lot of problems arise to a lot of these coaches sell steroids. So,
yeah,
you know,
no, that is true. 100%.
They're selling these guys the stuff that they supposedly need, you know. And, you know, so they want them to take more because this is the mentality of some of these guys that they'll be like, I'll take anything you tell me to take. The more you tell these guys to take, the more they get excited about the whole thing sometimes too. So the problem is, look, you can't not talk about it. You can't tell people don't take, you can't go from being a guy who took steroids and who competed to being a guy who says, you know, I'm against the whole thing, and you shouldn't take anything. You can't go. There has to be a middle ground someplace if you want to stay as an educator. If you don't care and you want to, you know, go on that tirade and say I'm anti this, anti that, and then that you shouldn't use anything, you're being naive to think that people are going to stop using them. They're not. Yeah. So knowing that, that's why I try to educate people. You know.
Yeah, I don't think people are not going to take them. I mean, you know, it's taken me forever to get down to finally where I'm on a dose that my doctor's prescribed.
Right.
And a lot of that is in your head anyway, because you haven't been able to deal with actually, okay, it's over, you know, I mean, and a lot of people deal with that. And so, okay, so it's over. Now you've got to start working your way down. You don't need to be 300 pounds anymore. You don't need to be that guy anymore. You don't have to be the biggest guy that, you know, walking into any gym. It doesn't matter at this point. So, you know, there's that. And I was talking to Pete Rubish. I don't know if you know him, but Pete, phenomenal guy, went completely natural. And it really challenged me because he's like, dude, I went off completely at 29 and he's off of everything. And it took him a while for his body to come back. But I'm like, yeah, but I'm 57, you know? So I mean, I burned my body up. And so testosterone for me is like my lifeline. You know, I mean, if not, I am not feeling well. I get cloudy headed.
It's like I said, if you don't have enough insulin production in your body and you're running high blood sugars, and you're like, I can't take insulin because it's a bodybuilding drug. You're an idiot. Because why? Yeah, that's what it was created for. You know, testosterone was made to give people replacement when they don't produce enough. I mean, that's what it was made for. You know. Yeah,
and so I think my point is this: is I'm not naive to think that people aren't going to do it. But at some point, there's got to be some sort of leveler that you know, and I just and I understand the education thing, but there's got to be some responsibility from parents to understand what their kids are doing. And I'm like, how did your 12-year-old kid get trend, for God's sakes? And how did you not know this kid is you know? I saw this kid, 12 years old. He's like a maniac in the gym. I'm like, holy cow.
My son, listen to me. My son at 5 years old he was getting packages from Amazon in the mail with toys in them. I'm telling my wife, did you order this stuff for my son? Did you order this stuff? She's like, what are you talking about? Because we order a lot of Amazon stuff in my house. She's like, I didn't order that. So I'm like, he's ordering stuff off the computer, off my phone. 5 years old. He can't even read at that point, and he's ordering stuff on Amazon. So kids are very resourceful, and you know, you get a 12-year-old, they can work a computer better than we can, and I'm good.
That's fair.
And so their access, they can order, and you can order. Look, there's a lot of lunatics out there that sell steroids on websites. Why they would do it, I have no idea, because it's so easy to catch these people because there's a paper trail a mile long, but they do it because they get away with it because they kind of float under the radar. Because look, the DEA can't go after everyone. They go after the big fish, right? Yeah. So there's always a new person popping up selling stuff on there. And so they go into these, you know, forums where they talk about gear sources and they order it. You know, they use their parents' credit card or whatever, where they they go to Western Union, they get a money order. I don't know how they do it. I don't know how these kids do it nowadays, but they figure out a way to pay for the stuff, and they get it in the mail. They get the package when it arrives. They run up to their room and they do it. Who the heck knows? Kids are very resourceful. They're very sneaky. You know, kids smoke pot at 12 years. I can't even believe how young these kids are smoking pot in school. I'm like, my wife's telling me, I'm like, are you kidding me? Yeah. Where would they even know to do this? Because TikTok and, you know, YouTube and Instagram, they watch all this stuff and they learn stuff that they never would ever learn before because they're having access to adult content. Look, we try to stop my son from watching YouTube. He's as slick as they come. He'll find a way to do it. And it's like an addiction for them. You know, he's like, all right, Mom, can I stay up all night and watch YouTube? And, you know, if the Friday night he doesn't have school the next day, we're like, go ahead. And this kid will stay up the whole night. I don't even know how he stays awake the whole night and does it. You know,
I'm not.
but you know, it's crazy. But that's how they're finding out about this stuff. They think it's cool. My son doesn't have any inkling to be a bodybuilder, but all of a sudden he's watching this stuff and he's like showing me these videos of these guys flexing and stuff like that. And he's like, and then now I see him doing it. It's not because of me. He's not doing it because Dave Palumbo is his dad. He's doing it because he's watching it on TikTok. And
watching all these influencers. Yes,
and
crazy.
Logan Paul,
and all these guys claiming to be natural.
Yeah, he wants to change his name. He doesn't like Palumbo. He wants to be because his name is Logan. He wants to be Logan Paul because it's like a shortened version of Palumbo. So he's writing that on his school homework. My wife's like, you have to write your name. That's not your name. You know, because he thinks he's cool. He's got to have the prime energy, not the energy. We don't let him drink the energy, but he has the prime drinks. You know, they're like coconut water-based drinks. Yeah. He takes them and he puts them in his room in his drawers. And if his friends come over, he hands them out like he's a big shot because it's I guess they're hard to find because, you know, they can't keep up with production because that's how influential these guys are on social media.
Oh, yeah.
They can't even keep up production. So,
Yeah.
so it doesn't surprise me that kids are doing stuff like that. I don't think it's a lot of kids doing trenbolone and stuff like that. But the fact that any kids are doing it is, like you said, is appalling almost.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So, okay. So what's next for Dave Palumbo? What are you doing? What are you working on? I mean, because it looks like from what I can see, you're always working on something.
Yeah, you know, well, you know, I like to keep myself diversified. As you know, I got my snake breeding shirt. I breed snakes and I breed reptiles. But that's
actually kind of cool looking.
I actually have a channel called Muscle Serpents University, which has over 20,000 subscribers on it. So I do like 4 or 5 days a week. I do videos on my animals I have because I have a very big collection, and people seem to like it. And but that's just kind of like my hobby, you know. Even though it is a business, but you know, it's funny because you would never believe it, but you know, you can have a snake clutch of eggs that could be, let's say, there's 5 or 6 eggs in a python clutch of eggs. One of those eggs could be worth $20 when they hatch, the babies.
Right.
One of the babies could be worth $10,000. So it's like a pyramid, multi-level marketing business where if you could produce something that no one's got, like pattern-wise, color-wise, then you can kind of name the price on it. And then everyone wants that. So then they can add it to their collection and then make something new with it. And then they're at the top of the pyramid. So it's kind of like a little bit of an addicting like hobby. So that I kind of like that. It kind of keeps me, sometimes when I get burnt out on bodybuilding, I can go down and play with my, you know, my animal. Yeah. I have a lot of animals. So that's my people always ask me, what do you do for, like, you know, just relaxation? That's what I do for that.
Yeah. So you're not out
as
playing
far
golf
as the bodybuilding goes, you know, I think it's my responsibility to continue to educate people. Number one, cover the sport of bodybuilding in the best light possible, because I think there's no magazines anymore. And back in you know, in our day when we first started, getting in a magazine was the greatest accolade that you could possibly achieve, because it validated you. Your friends could see you on the newsstand, they could see you on the magazine, and that doesn't exist anymore. So being validated by a person who's admired in the industry and who's respected as far as a press person goes, I guess, and I have to believe that I'm one of the top guys, you know, is important. So for me to interview the guy who wins the USA Championships or the NPC Nationals is important to these guys. And I know that it means a lot to them and validates them. So that's important. And obviously I've been doing they didn't call it podcast, they called it radio shows back when I first started. But I've been doing since 2006. I've been doing heavy muscle radio, and I haven't missed a weekend since then. And so every you know, Sunday night or Monday we put that show up, and so it's, you know, it's like keeps people apprised of what's going on in the bodybuilding industry. I really love that. I love doing that. But you know, I make my living from this, you know, Species Nutrition, which is a very high-end product line that I launched in 2008. And it's consistently grown over the years. It's got a very loyal following. It's all very high-end products. And I'm not going to go on a marketing pitch now. It's not the time. But that's my soul is in that, because I every product that we put out, every time I put out a new product, it's something that I know is going to help people, not just performance-wise, but health-wise. And I'm trying to make an all-in-one encompassed line where you can use this and everything is going to contribute to not only good muscle gains and repairs, but also good health. And so that's kind of where my passions are. And obviously, you know, as a parent, just like you're a parent, my children obviously are, you know, the thing I live for. But you know, but this is what these give me pleasure. You know, this line, because I'm proud of it, because it's like kind of like the evolution of who I am as went from bodybuilder to media to actual supplement company owner. And I don't have to be a $1 billion supplement company, because that doesn't matter to me. Because if I make products that I won't even use because they suck, even if they sell $1 billion a year, that wouldn't give me. I wouldn't have pleasure saying, "Hi, that's my line. That's my line. I make $1 billion a year," and everyone's like, "Those products suck." Yeah, but they sell a lot in Walmart and GNC. Well, who cares? You know, that doesn't. Yeah. I'm too much of an I'm too much of an egomaniac. I need to have something that I can say is the best. So that's where I put my thing. And as far as where I'd like to see, I always have to say, I always have a project in the back of my head. You know, I would like, and if I ever hit the lottery, or if someone ever comes to me with a lot of money, I would like to build a bodybuilding Hall of Fame at some point in the future.
Yeah, I saw that.
With a Hall of Fame gym attached to it.
Wow.
That would be the crowning achievement, I think, of all my years of doing what I do, to be able to build a monument to the best bodybuilders of all time, where people can actually go and make a pilgrimage and say, hey, these are the best bodybuilders of all time, you know, and have a building they could actually see it in. And so that might be something that I do in the future. But that's why I have to stay alive. I have a lot. See, some people run out of stuff to do. They're like, oh, you know, I'm kind of like did everything I want to do already. You know, my kids are grown up and married. If I die tomorrow, I don't care. I have too many things still to do. I can't die. I got to stay alive, you know, because I got 4 things.
Just so you can get them done.
That's
well,
right.
Dave, hey, thank you, man. I would love to actually have you on where you can actually discuss some of that stuff. I'd love to really talk about some of the other things that you're doing as well in the future. So anytime, man, I would love to have you on. I think I learned a lot about who you are today, your philosophy, and I really appreciate you coming on the show. So this is the exact kind of thing that we're looking for, men who impact their world. So again, thank you for coming on, and hopefully we can have you on in the future.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot, Jeff.
Thanks, Dave. Goodbye.
The impact.